Hey everyone, me again. Welcome to the second to last installment on my Pioneer 556 AK from the Forged Trunnion Series. And my final word, probably at least, on magazine compatibility, because I've tried quite a large variety of all these magazine options, and so I guess I'm ready to discuss how well they work, if at all. The last installment is going to be kind of a whole thing about how well it's holding up in general after thousands of rounds. So that's what's coming next. Now, if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, that's where I discuss things like my initial impressions of build quality, fit and finish. There's a blurb on accuracy, that sort of stuff. Do look at parts 1 and 2. I'll link them in the description below. If you haven't watched those parts, you will note probably that this rifle is not in factory original configuration. For instance, I did replace the stock, I replaced the pistol grip, the safety is now a standard AKM safety, and I did replace the brake with a 74 style brake. Most of these changes are strictly kind of for aesthetic and fit and finish reasons, except the brake, which genuinely does perform noticeably better than the slant brake that comes from the factory. But anyways, that's not really what this video is about. So let's get rolling with the magazine options, and to kick it off, to keep it ironic, I suppose, we'll start with the non-starters, the ones that will not fit, don't work. So if you have one of these, probably best not to bother with them. They will work for other things, of course, but at least not in my experience and not with this particular gun. Anyways, let's get rolling. So the first ones that simply do not work, will not fit, don't even try, is Galil magazines. This one is a steel surplus. As you can see, it's just too wide. It will not even fit in the magwell. The same is true of the polymer offering. Just simply, yeah, no go. The same goes for Wasser 3. Just simply too wide, again, no go as well. These do work, fit, and function in my Zastava M90, but for this gun, no, would not recommend. Same goes for these Romanian drums, if you can find such a thing. Again, simply, it just doesn't even come close to fitting, so not an option either. Zastava, same thing. This is a Zastava steel magazine. Simply, again, far too wide. I don't know if they'd work if you tried to mill out the magwell a little bit. But such as they are, definitely needs a lot of modification before you can work. And if you're wondering, the Zastava polymer offering, same exact problem, not even close to fitting. And this one kind of came as a surprise to me, but AC Unity, at least in my example, is a no-go. So the width is actually right, you can see that here, but it doesn't lock in because these rear corners bump into the center pin. And there's not really that much material there, so I can't like shave off 0.5 millimeter to get it to fit, and it's not even close. I have heard reports of people using these, but they're like very, very tight. But in my case, I don't know if my magwell is just, 0.5 millimeter too far back, or the center pin is a little too far forward and my rifle's out of spec slightly. But maybe you could file these in the maybe, but in my experience, they simply don't work. The 556 WBP magazines are kind of borderline. From the factory, they had kind of the same problem as the AC Unity mags, where the rear corner was running into the center pin, but it was much closer, and so shaving off just a hair with a Dremel was enough to get these to lock in, and they do lock in very positively. It doesn't wobble whatsoever in either direction, but I did experience misfeeds, and I have a couple of these, and I had the same problem with both. So even though they do fit really well, I can't recommend them on that basis. At least in the case of my rifle, they just didn't work. And now that we've transitioned into kind of the maybe or ones that work with modification category, we have 545 AK-74 magazines. So generally speaking, you can't run them straight. because the round just won't be positioned in the correct location to be fed correctly, so they need conversion followers. There's a couple of different manufacturers that make them. Pod Arms is probably the most prolific of them. There's another one called Dangus Leatherworks, and if you're adept at 3D printing, the files are out there. You can also make your own, and with these conversion followers, you have the option of running, relatively decent quality AK-74 mags. Plus, they look right and all that sort of thing. So I tried this with two of the different manufacturers, specifically, of course, Pod Arms, which is what's in this one, and also the Dangus Leatherworks option. By the way, they're not all blue, but that's all they had available at the time. But in any case, I've had lesser luck with the Pod Arms option. They would work for like the first 20 something rounds, and then the last several, and I'll roll in some footage as to what that looks like, they would misfeed. I don't know why, because like I said, it ran perfectly for pretty much the entire magazine, last few rounds, problems. And the odd thing is running it, cycling manually, it seems to work fine, but in practice, they don't. So by the way, that's a note, don't rely on cycling manually as an indicator of whether or not it's actually reliable. I've had much better luck with the Dangus Leatherworks option. And the good news is they're actually, let me get that to focus by the way, they're actually more affordable. So these are only $8 for this follower. The Pod Arms option tends to be anywhere between $15 and $20 depending on whether they're on sale or where you're buying it from. So this option is actually fairly decent in my opinion. Now, your luck may vary with this one. I've heard good reports about the Pod Arms followers, and there's also, of course, a large variety of AK-74 magazines out there. You have, Russian, East German, Bulgarian, to name a few, and so maybe a combination of those things might end up working differently. But of course, I should note that the AK-74 mags do lock in very positively, like they're made for it essentially. So yes, this one could definitely be an option, but with the right conversion followers, but you may end up having to do a little bit of like, trial and error to see which combination tends to work best for you. And the last of the ones that needed some modification is these Pro Mag with the steel lining. Now, Pro Mag is not the most reputable manufacturer, of course. They can work at the range. The steel lining, of course, does help in the case of this one. And this one had the same problem as the others with this rear corner hitting the center pin, but there was enough kind of material there to be able to, shave that off and get it to lock in. And I have run this magazine. It does work. So not the most ideal option because, having to shave off from the feed lips might potentially kind of compromise structural integrity, maybe not just because of the steel lining, but these definitely can work. Okay, so to start off with some of the options that seem to work okay straight out of the box without modification, we have the Pro Mag Waffle Mag in 5.56. So these seem to fit fine. Sorry, I have to do this on camera. It may be a little awkward. Oh, there we go. So these, they don't wobble in any direction. They feed, they function. Doesn't mean I can still recommend these because unfortunately the build quality on these is really quite low. I have broken these without intending to. So they function as far as they'll feed your rifle at the range as long as you're gentle with them. They are cheap. I guess there is that going for it as well. But I can't recommend them for any other purpose than that, just because, the cheap plastic construction is such. So yes, they work. Do I recommend them? Yeah, probably not. The other option, of course, is the Pioneer magazine. So these are what these ship with, but you can buy additional ones. I believe you can go from Atlantic Firearms, so you may be able to get them off the Pioneer website as well. These do lock in pretty much perfectly. Again, no wobble whatsoever. I haven't had any reliability problems with them. They do seem to work. I can't really speak for their build quality because they genuinely look and feel like cheap plastic as well. I can say that I haven't broken one yet, and maybe I will do a separate video where I torture test one just to see, but it does work at the very least. For the range, perhaps nothing else, we'll find out, but it is an option that does work. And the last of what I've tried and had good luck with is the barrel or barrel, however that's pronounced. These are made in Poland. This is unmodified as well. And these lock in, they feed, they function quite perfectly in this rifle. I've never had any reliability problems with it. They don't have any like steel lining or reinforcement, but despite that, they do have a really quite a good reputation. They do work. The downside is they are a little on the pricier side. When I see them, they're kind of in the, 35, maybe $30 to $35 range. So not the cheapest option out there. You kind of run the risk of defeating the purpose of buying the cheapest 5.56 AK on the market if you're going to run it with, $30, $35 magazines, but they do seem to work. And I have a couple of these and yeah, they seem to run just fine. So, are there any other options that we haven't discussed that could be viable? Well, maybe. So, there is a magazine offering from a manufacturer called Puffgun. I did not get a chance to try that. I just wasn't able to track one down. I have heard that they do work. Of course, I can't personally recommend it just because I didn't have a chance to try it myself, but that could potentially be an option as well. And then there are the Bulgarian Circle 10 magazines, which I actually refuse to try on a matter of principle, mainly because when I do see them, they're generally at least $50 a piece, but oftentimes, quite a bit more, maybe 70 or 80. And it seems like that really defeats the purpose of buying, the cheapest 5.56 AK on the market and then having to run it with $50 magazines. In the first video on this rifle, I kind of compared it to the Mitsubishi Mirage of the AK world. Well, think of having to run a Mitsubishi Mirage on some sort of specialized fuel that is, $8 or $9 a gallon or something like that. It's like, what's even the point? Will they work? I don't know. Supposedly the AC Unity mags are, patterned after the Circle 10, or at least that's how they advertise them. And in my case, these don't work, so maybe a close call anyways. So maybe not. And there's probably some other manufacturers out there as well. So that's this installment, at least on magazine compatibility. The next one, I don't know if I've mentioned it or not, but will probably be kind of the final durability test as far as after thousands of rounds, how well everything is holding up. That sort of thing, I'll recheck headspace and all this other kind of business. But as always, thank you for watching.